Hello YouTube friends, Ben Ochart here. Thank you so much for tuning in. A series of bad decisions have resulted in 4 dead fish. Roughly about 4 bad decisions and 4 dead fish. Fish that were very special to me, and for that reason this video was not an easy one to make. But there's some good lessons here, some good takeaways that I'm hoping you can get something from without having to go through the experience I went through. And then while thinking about putting out this video, a friend of mine posted something to Instagram which really kind of changed my attitude and kind of put things in a different perspective. So let's go ahead and talk about it and what these decisions were that led to the dead fish and what the takeaway was. So thank you for tuning in. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'll start with a little bit of a backstory. And a friend of mine here in Nashville, a fish friend of mine, and offered to give me a fish that he was going to be taking over to the local fish store, and for a variety of reasons. And I know this person's tank. I know the fish, and so I felt very comfortable with just taking the fish and putting them directly into the 90-gallon tank. There's nothing wrong with that fish. The fish was not sick. I don't think the fish brought anything into my tank. And as a matter of fact, that fish is still alive and living in a smaller tank just off to the side here. However, the first bad decision I made was not sticking to my rule of always, without exception, putting fish into quarantine for at least 30 days. If I had done that, not because that fish was ill or needed quarantine, but if I had done that, it would have saved the following steps, which I'll share with you, that resulted in some of my fish dying. So what happened was, while this was going on, a couple of the hang-on back filters were putting water out over the middle channel. The middle channel of the hang-on back is what happens when some of the media gets blocked, and so rather than just flood over the edges, it comes through a middle channel and doesn't go through the media. So it's an indication that you need to service the hang-on back filters. So just prior to having that fish delivered, I had swapped out a set of filters. These are the inserts that you put into the filter. So a couple days later, I noticed that that middle channel was still overflowing, which told me that, okay, what's really wrong was probably the other set of filters, which are pinky floss. So I went ahead and swapped those out. Now, here's another rule that I broke and violated. When you have multiple filters on a tank, really only service one of them at a time. Really, no matter what's going on with the other one, really just service one and then wait a week or two and then service the other one. Instead, I figured, for a variety of reasons, I figured it'd be okay, since I had done the back set of filters, it would be okay to do the front set. Decision number 2, that shouldn't have been made. Now, around that time, I noticed that the fish that had been given to me was healing some of the, some of the aggression that it had, some of the hits it had taken and some of the fin damage from the tank it had been in. It was healing, but it was healing kind of slow. So I decided to go ahead and help the healing process along by adding a little bit of an antibiotic to the tank. In this case, some Fritz Marison. So what that did, what adding the antibiotic did, was again, sort of violating one of my own rules. When you medicate a tank, don't do anything. Don't water change, don't service canisters, if you do anything at all, just take out Pyrogen, Chemi-Pure, or charcoal. Otherwise, leave everything alone. Don't change anything. Just medicate the tank. And if you do that, chances are that those medications are not going to disrupt your beneficial bacteria. However, because I had serviced those filters, and these are the conclusions I've arrived at, because I had serviced those filters and then added this Maricin, I created a bit of a beneficial bacteria die-off. The tank got a little bit cloudy. I thought it was just because I had recently messed with the filters, not realizing that what that cloudiness was the kind of bloom that occurs when a tank is starting to sort of recycle or cycle up for the first time. You'll get that kind of fogginess. So fast forward another day, I come downstairs and the fish are in obvious distress. They're hanging out at the top. They're laboring in their breathing. I'm thinking there's an oxygen issue because I had turned down the air stone. It was creating too many micro bubbles, so I turned it down a little bit, and I thought, uh-oh. I turned the O2, the oxygen, I turned the micro bubbles down too much. I turned the air stone down too much, and let me turn it back up again. But that didn't help, and they started to get worse. I did a water change. I tested the water. Everything tested okay. It tested out. It seemed to test out okay. So it may have been just a spike in ammonia and nitrite that impacted the fish, and then the tank sort of dialed back in again. But that spike took its toll on the fish. So, not quarantining a fish, not medicating a fish in quarantine, instead medicating an entire tank, messing with filters and swapping out media that has beneficial bacteria in it, and then within very close proximity adding an antibiotic to the tank. These were some of the factors that led to ultimately four fish dying. And what fish died? Two that, well, they're all very special to me. I love all my fish, but these two I think had to be at the top of my list for favorite fish. The red-spotted Severum, who was the one that would always greet me when I'd come down the stairs, right? He'd always come up and greet me, and was just a great fish, just a really good fish. Never went after any other fish, was very mellow, just in my mind, kind of an ideal fish. The Starry Night, which was just a spectacular fish, the Paratilapia paulini, a spectacular specimen of that kind of fish. I've never seen one anywhere that looked that great, that had the blue dots and that would turn to white, and I just hated finding him dead. One of the Viejas didn't make it, and one of the red shoulders didn't make it either. At any rate, I added a tremendous amount of beneficial bacteria. I pulled out some media from this tank, which was due for servicing, and rather than tossing the media, very gunked up media full of beneficial bacteria, I put it into those filters. I also added activated charcoal and pyrogen to pull out any residual meds that were in the tank, and I also did a water change. And the fish that remain are all looking good. They've all returned. You can see them here. They all look great now. The ones that are left look great and look like they've bounced back and recovered. Every one of them was really showing signs of stress. So anyway, in conclusion, new fish, regardless of the source, regardless of where they came from, new fish should go into quarantine. And that way, if I then made the decision to treat because of the damage to the fins, I would have treated in quarantine, and antibiotics would have never gotten near this tank, and I'd still have those fish. Other basic rule, never service all of your filters at once. If you have only one filter, service only one section of it, don't service all of it. If you have multiple filters, only service one, leave the other one alone. And that way you'll be less likely to have a momentary crash or a mini recycling of sorts, which can create a momentary spike in ammonia and nitrite, which is very, very hard on the fish. And so that's it. I just want to be upfront with all of you. Just put it out there. It's not easy to come out and say this kind of stuff, but it has to be said. And hopefully there's some takeaways And people have asked me in the past, well, will medicating my tank impact my beneficial bacteria? I always say no, it's not going to, but I need to add to that, while medicating, don't do anything else to the tank except remove charcoal, pyrogen, or any kind of chemical filtration. Otherwise, do not mess with your filters. Don't vacuum, don't do anything unless the instructions in the medication tell you to. Like some medications will say after 4 days, do a water change, or on day 2, vacuum. Like if you're treating ick, sometimes they want you to scoop up the eggs and things from the substrate before they hatch, things like that. So, okay, so there you have it. On a positive note, I've made a tremendous amount of progress, well, a tremendous amount, but a good amount of progress with the 210. I have the background on, I have all the plumbing done, all the pipes have been glued, the sump is in place, the holes are drilled in the back so I can get the FX6 in place, and my son-in-law is coming over. We're gonna lift the tank a 1/2 inch and just prop it up about a 1/4 inch on the left side so I can have it in perfect level. It's perfectly level from front to back, but from right to left, which over a 6-foot tank might not make that much of a difference, but from right to left, it's down by about a 1/4 inch. So we're gonna go ahead and jack it up a 1/4 inch on the left side, and then I'm gonna go ahead and water test it. After my hesitation about making this video, my good friend James Largo over at the Cichlid Shack posted this video here, which shows his personal tank that he keeps at the Cichlid Shack. It's a 300-gallon tank. I believe it's 300, maybe more, and just full of gorgeous, giant African cichlids, many of which he raised out, many of which are very, very rare and hard to get. And he trusted some folks to take care of the shop so he could take a couple days off. They made a fatal error of servicing that large tank, and then forgetting to turn the filtration back on. And this was on Saturday night when they closed up. The shop reopened on Tuesday. When James came in Tuesday morning, he was greeted by just the devastation that you see. Comparing my situation to that, I mean, 4 fish compared to what James just went through is absolutely nothing. It's putting it in perspective, and definitely give James some love. Send him some business, and put some good thoughts his way. All right, that's it for me. Thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you on Saturday for Cichlids and Coffee, where I will go ahead and show you the 210 and how it's progressing, and hopefully in about 9 to 10 days, I'll have the African cichlids in that tank. And I'm going to be moving over a lot of beneficial bacteria in the form of substrate, decor, and also even some filter media that I'm probably going to be shoving into the FX6 just to capture as much beneficial bacteria as possible. And I'll probably also be treating it with Fritz, maybe some Fritz Zyme 7. All right, that's it for me. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.